Hiya, it's Amanda here from Lolli Lulu Crafts, and today we are going to be making a swing card. And a swing card is, if you can kind of get the gist, is one of these cards where you have that lovely double fold there, and this piece here, this bit here is meant to be sort of behind through the aperture, and as you fold the card across, it kind of twists and swings around, so you see the behind there on that side of this piece here, and then when you pull it open it swings back and you see this side. So this is what we're going to be doing today. Don't worry too much about the measurements and things at the moment. We're going to go into this and I'm going to explain it, and hopefully you're going to see that it is a really simple card to make. You don't need dies. It is obviously easier if you do have the dies, but you can make this using a craft knife and a ruler. I'm not going to show you that. I have got dies, and so therefore I wouldn't be using a craft knife and a ruler. Just one other thing to say before we get going with the actual making of our card base. We've got here some half dies, so this is like a half a square, and we've got some complete dies, and there are actually two ways of making a swing card, and you can make it using the half dies and you can make it using a complete die. Let me just have a little explain as best I can on this drawing. When you use your half dies, you're going to position one here and cut your aperture, and what I say aperture, you're going to cut like a flap, and that flap then becomes this piece here. Then you're going to use the other half die and position it here, and that will cut a similar flap. And then because of the score lines, you've got one here and one here, and you can see how it's sort of folded. That is what, as you fold it, that's what makes the swing. However, if you're using two half squares here, so you've got one here, it obviously stops at this line here, and then you've got another half square that stops at this score line here. You can't go across into this centre section because otherwise you just have a hole, you don't have a swing card. So this centre section is kind of like you don't touch. So if you've got a half square here and a half square here, you don't end up with a square because you end up with half there, and then this centre section. So you end up with an oblong. So you can see that's fine. I mean, okay, if you want a square it's a bit of a bummer, but it's fine if you're using squares because you end up with an oblong. But what if you're using, say, a circle? You'll end up with a circle half here and a circle half here, and then like a straight piece across the middle. So it's almost like a capsule shape. You know, like a tablet capsule, where it's kind of straight and then it has a rounded end and straight and a rounded end, maybe like a bit of a minion. So, you know, if you're looking to put a circle in the middle here as your swing, then that's really a bit of a bummer if you're using half dies, because you know, it's just not working for you. Whereas if you used a whole die, the way that it works, you can still end up with a circle in the center, or whatever shape you decide, and that's the other beauty of it. You know, you can use different shapes when you use your whole die. However, today we are going to use the half dies. I will then do on another occasion a separate video showing how to do the same card but using your whole dies, and hopefully between the two, if you have no dies, you will be able to work out how to cut it using your craft knife anyway. Okay, so hopefully that's clear. I know that probably the diagram part isn't that clear at the moment, but I think as you see it made, you'll understand sort of a bit more what the diagram really is, because my drawing is not fantastic. So the main part, the main part of the show, as it were, is these half squares. Now this particular set with Tattered lace came with the swing adapter. Now personally I wouldn't think, it's not something that I think is necessary. It came with the pack, and all it is you get this die, but it's a scoring die. You place it on the line where you want to score, because when you want to score, you only want to score this piece here, the top and the bottom, you obviously don't want to score right down because you don't want this center section to have score lines on it. You want it to be one solid piece that's going to swing as a whole. So in order to make that easier, what they did was create these swing apertures die things. However, this only came with one. I think you'd really need the whole set for it to be any good, because unless you are doing absolutely something that is that wide with this particular one, it's not going to be any good to you because the score lines only go up to there. However, it, as I said, it does come, I haven't got a picture of it unfortunately, it does come where you've got quite a few in a pack and they're all different sort of distances, so you'll have the score line coming much closer in and wider, etc. So in that sense, if you like the idea of using this, then you would be able to get them to fit pretty much most sizes, I'm sure. However, I don't see that it's that hard to put a score line in. I really don't. So I personally don't think it's necessary to worry about that, and I am not using that today at all. But I just thought I would show it to you just so that you could see, if you had that in any kit that you had, you understood what it was for. Okay, so I think really we need to get on with the actual making the card, because I think that it sort of almost sounds more complicated than it is. So it's a nice simple way of doing this, and not having to worry too much about measurements, is to take your piece of cardstock. So here I've got a piece of A4, and that's in the coconut white from Creative Expressions. I love this card, really nice weight to it. So I want it to be 7 inches tall, because I'm kind of in my mind getting like a 7x5 card. Now obviously by the time it's finished it won't fold up to 7x5, but I'm going to cut it to 7 inches high so that it's not the same height. That's not a problem, and that's the only cutting off I'm going to do, because although I said I want it kind of like, I'm thinking in my head 7x5, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of mark 5 inches from that end and 5 inches from that end, and whatever's in the middle is going to be my folding, where the fold is, the width of the folded part. So it doesn't really matter unless you want a specific depth, and because of what you're doing in the centre. Unless it's like ridiculously wide, it doesn't really matter what this piece ends up with. You don't want it so skinny that it hasn't got any functionality to it, so that when it moves to do the folding, it's not so thin that it doesn't really work. So we're going to now just take a pencil, and I'm going to actually use the side of one of my cutting plates, and so I'm just popping it to the edge, and then I'm looking across, and 5 inches is on that line there. So then I'm just going to very lightly draw a pencil line, which you can probably barely see. I don't think you can even get it. There's a pencil line anyway at 5 inches just down here. So then I'm going to flip it around. Because I'm doing it evenly, it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to line it up again, and I'm doing exactly the same thing. I'm going to mark it at 5 inches. And then what we've ended up with is, what is it? It's about 1 3/4 inches roughly in the centre there. I don't think you'll get it. The 2 marks are here anyway, where my thumbs are. I want it at 5 inches from each side, because I've got a 5-inch square, so that I'm cutting using the half square to cut with. It's the 5-inch size, so that means it would come out, because it's a half square die, it's going to come out 2.5 inches. So that was really the other reason, was that because it's going to come out exactly to the halfway point, and you know how I like things nice and even. So now we're going to take I'm going to be using my platinum, so I'm going to take the cutting mat, the base plate, the cutting mat, my piece of paper, And then I'm taking my half dies, and then it is number 16, which is the 4th one down, is the size that we need. So what I thought I'd do is, the piece that I cut off is about 1.5 inches, so I thought I'd use that as a guide, and I'll put that across the bottom here, and then when I do the other side I'll know it's even, and it also just shoves this up a little bit higher. I wanted it at the top end, not centre, so that I think that just looks nice to have that. So then we line up my die with the piece of card and the line there. Okay, so I've just popped a bit of tape on, and then I'm going to put a little bit just here as well, just to hold that still. And then I'm going to take my little guide piece away. And the other thing is, if you haven't got a large die cutter like your Grand Caliber or whatever, then change the height of your card, so you know, and change the size of your little aperture, well, it's not aperture, your little flappy thing here. Make it all smaller, go down, so I think you could get away with like a 6-inch card. That would go through fine, and do that, and then that way you can still do this without having to worry that you haven't got a big machine. Okay, so I'm just popping that through. If I do it that way around, I won't have to go as far. So this is the same sandwich as I would do for a spellbinder's die. So let's see if that cuts okay. This is the first time I've put a tattered lace through. Okay, so that's cut beautifully. Hope you can see that. So that's no problem at all. So now I'm going to do the same on the opposite side, and so there is our 2 little flaps. Okay, so the next thing that we want to do is just add our score lines. Now clearly we don't want to score for anywhere from here to here, because this section here is what we want to move. So if we score it, it won't be a solid piece anymore, it'll be a bendy piece. So we only want to score from here to here on each bit. So you want to score from the end of the cut line to the top where you've made your pencil mark. So what I'm going to do is just use my scoreboard here, line it up, and then we can easily just take this and score down there, and then the next one again from the, you want to make sure it's from that line at the end of the cut line, that's the most important bit, and then just flip it around and do the same on the opposite side. Like so. There we go, you can just see that now, and you can see my pencil marks. So now we're going to take and we're going to erase the pencil mark before we do the next section. So just going to get rid of that. I mean, to a certain extent it might not matter, because you might be covering that up anyway if you get to, when you get to the decoration stage. So that's all erased. So then all we want to do is start to fold this. So we're going to fold this one, so those pieces are folding. So that will pop through to the back, and fold that across, and then make sure it lines up evenly from side to side, so that when then you do this bit here, you know that it's going to be nice and straight. Okay, and then we're going to turn that back that way, and then this one is going to be turn it over completely, and do exactly the same. So you're zigzagging it, but by turning it over you can see what you're doing a little bit better. Okay, and then you can see, or it just automatically, bam, there is your swing card. Isn't that so cool? So just by folding it over like that, you see the reverse side, and then opening it up, you see that side. So that's it. It's as simple as that. You can obviously now go in off and decorate it, and you can see that what's visible here is your square. So you could decorate that as a square if you wanted to, and then do something just down the edge that's slightly different, you know, like a little panel or something, so that when it does open a little bit, because although you can't see it massively, obviously that way round it's not a square, but that way it is. So it's just kind of, you could, as I say, decorate that as a square and then just put like a panel of paper down there so it's not completely blank, or a sentiment or something. So as I say, it's really simple to make. On this one we really didn't worry about what this centerpiece was, but you can fiddle with that so that if you wanted to die cut your rectangle layers evenly using your die cuts, then you could work it out that way. But otherwise, you know, you can just fiddle with it, try it out. You don't have to be too hung up with the maths of, you know, I've got to, you know, put it at this 2 and a bit inches and then another 2 and a bit inches. You don't have to get too hung up with it. But hopefully that's simplified it just a little for you, and I'm going to go off and decorate this, but we'll do that on a separate video as always. So if you want to see that, do go to the blog post that's down. If you're on YouTube, it's linked down below this video, and that will have the other video on it that shows you the completed project and what I'm actually going to do to it. So hopefully you'll enjoy that too. Okay, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again soon. Bye for now. Bye.